Good morning, children. In the previous class, we were trying to understand about the early phase as well as the last phase of the Indian national movement, where the Gandhiji's role in national movement we have discussed, and what were happening between the 1922 to 29. Also, we tried to understand about the non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement. There were many movements which through which Gandhiji was very busy. So Mahatma Gandhi has abruptly called up the non-cooperation movement when in February 1922 a crowd of peasants had set fire a police station in Uttar Pradesh. So that incident we call it as a Chauri Chaura incident, which has taken place in 1922. So this is a Chauri Chaura. So it was in 1922 that Gandhiji has called up the non-cooperation movement. So the peasants were provoked because the police had fired on their peaceful demonstration. Then mob has attacked the police station. They had set fire the police station itself. So in that fire, even police personnel were also injured and dead. Once the non-cooperation movement was over, his followers had stressed that the Congress must undertake constructive work in the rural areas, because in the rural areas the consciousness of nationalism did not provoke the people to join into the national movement. So other leaders such as C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru argued that party should fight elections to the councils and enter them in order to influence the government policies also. Whether the Congress should participate in the elections or not is still a dilemma. So Motilal Nehru and people like C.R. Das had argued that we should participate in the elections so that we can influence the government policies even. Through the sincere social work in villages in the mid-1920s, the Gandhiji were able to extend their support base also in the rural areas. This proved to be very useful in launching the next movement, that is the civil disobedience movement in 1930. The two important developments of the mid-1920s were the formation of the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, that is the RSS, Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh. This got formed during the mid-1920s only. And another one is which is a Hindu cultural organization. It's not a political party, but it is a Hindu cultural organization. And the next one is the Communist Party of India, also got founded during the same period. So these two organizations had two different opinions, two different ideas about the kind of country India should be. So we shall find out more about them in the future classes. But with the revolutionary nationalist called as Bhagat Singh was also active during the 1920s period only. So the Shaheed Bhagat Singh also was very active during the 1920s period. He was even hanged during this period only. Coming to the civil disobedience movement, the most important movement in 1930, that is the civil disobedience movement. So this is the Indian National Congress met at Lahore in 1929 under the presidency of Jawaharlal Nehru, and in this session Congress declared that the attainment of Purna Swaraj, Purna means complete, Purna Swaraj as their goal. So it resolved to launch the civil disobedience movement in order to, so they have decided to launch this civil disobedience movement in order to attain the Purna Swaraj. So the leftists within the Congress there are rightists as well as leftists. So they took lead this time, giving a national goal and program. The Congress Working Committee has decided with enthusiasm that 26th January it should be observed as a Purna Swaraj Day. So by that day they expected that is a complete freedom day, 26th January. So they have resolved that 26th January will be the Purna Swaraj. On March 12th, 1930, Mahatma Gandhi decided to break the government law in making the salt. That making of salt has become very expensive for the common people purchase, and salt is a very common thing which we use in our day-to-day food. So they have imposed, British have imposed high taxes on the salt, and people unable to purchase the salt. So in order to make the salt on our own, Gandhiji has launched a movement called as Dandi March, which he started, the civil disobedience movement, that is, which he started from a village at Dandi in the Gujarat sea coast. The next morning, Gandhiji and his 78 companions began 375 kilometers walk, trekking, walk from the Sabarmati ashram. So this march was completed in 24 days. From Sabarmati to there, it is 375 kilometers. They have finished it in 24 days, and on the way, many people also joined it. Day by day, day after day, newspapers reported his progress, his speeches, and the impact on the people. Hundreds of village officials on his route resigned on their jobs. It was on 6th April 1930, Gandhiji reached Dandi. He picked up a handful of salt, and he has broken the law. That it's a symbol that Indians refuse the authority of the Britishers and the British laws. Therefore, the British should leave the country. A wave of enthusiasm also swept among the country, throughout the country, that salt laws were broken at many places, and even women also took a part in this agitation, in the civil disobedience movement. It was in Delhi alone, 1600 women were imprisoned. They were put in the jail, and this movement was not confined to the salt satyagraha alone. Foreign cloth shops, foreign liquor shops were picketed and burnt on the chaurastas, and hand spinning was made as a movement. As I told you, cotton, hand spinning, chakra, isn't it? Charaka of Gandhiji's. So making of the cloth on our own also has become a movement. So they have boycotted British schools and colleges and services. The people joined in this movement in large number. So a wave of enthusiasm has spread all over the country during this period. The government has replied with ruthless repression. Lathi charge was done, firing was done on the unarmed crowds of men and women. Over 90,000 satyagrahis, including Gandhiji and other Congress leaders, were also imprisoned. 110 people were killed, and over 300 people got injured and wounded in the police firing. And restrictions were imposed on the movement, on the press, and many restrictions. Restrictions in the sense, you should not do this, you should not do this. So that kind of restrictions were also imposed on the movement as well as on the press. Press also should not publish all these things. So the British attempted to divide the Indians by winning over the Muslims. So Jamindars and other minorities to their side. So they started following divide and rule policy. But the leaders took up a constructive program throughout the country, like wearing khaddar, removal of untouchability to bring a social cohesion in the movement. Even society, all sections of the society should participate in the movement. Then only it becomes very powerful. So all sections of the society, they started coming together. In response to the call by Gandhiji, a number of women has broken parda system. Previously there was a parda system, and they participated in the movement. And coming to the combined struggles of the Indian people bore fruit when the Government of India Act of 1935 prescribed a provincial autonomy. Partial autonomy was provided under Government of India Act. This is the most important one. Under this act, elections will be held. Of course, voting right was not given to everybody, but they have accepted that Indians will be elected into the legislative assemblies. At least that was done due to this mark. And the Congress formed governments in 7 out of 11 provinces in 1937 elections. And in September 1939, after 2 years of Congress rule in provinces, the Second World War has broken up in 1939, as you all know that. So during this, the Congress leaders were ready to support the British war effort, but in return, they were asking that Indians should be granted full independence, Purna Swaraj, after the war. The British refused to listen to the demand of Indians. The Congress ministries have resigned for their post as a result of that. Even though they had won in 1937 elections, because the British government did not listen to the Congress demand that after the war they should be given independence. as a result of that, the Congress ministries have resigned. So after this, in 1942, a big movement broke out, that is the Quit India movement, about which we shall see in the next class, children. Thank you.